Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And a big thanks to Meesh for kicking off a new series for us, Torah from Israel. During this very dark and hard time in Israel, this is a way for us to connect to our friends, our teachers, our mentors, and to support them and to enrich our own experience and connection to the land of Israel. At this time, we have an excellent lineup for the next month. Five teachers coming, and we're so lucky to start with Rabbi Meesh Hammer-Kossoy, who's the director of the Pardes Year program at the Pardes Institute in Jerusalem, where she has been making her professional home since 1999. She teaches Talmud, rabbinics, social justice, and ethics. And I will let Meesh take it away. I will post the source sheet at the appropriate time in the chat, so please look for that as well. Meesh, we're so happy to have you here. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Yael. Thank you, Rabbi Yael, Vari. It's nice to be some of my nearest and dearest. Ari and Becca and Laura and Kuti are really, really favorite students of mine. And I love Yael and Will as well. I just didn't have the opportunity to learn with them as directly. So Rabbi Yael's email just hit me at like this exact came on Rosh Chodesh in the midst of it's been today's day 13, and it's been unbelievable. The first day I missed most of it because it was Shabbos. I was lucky to have Shabbos, and even though I was davening when the first azakah alarm went off, and I didn't make too much of it, and I went and I didn't. Even though there were a series of azakot, I just had trust, and I didn't turn on my telephone, and I didn't know anything, and I was like getting ready to, thinking about what kind of a self-assuring thing would I write to my, I'm in charge of 75 students right now. What am I going to write to them the minute Shabbos is over? But I needed to check what happened, and I just was completely unprepared for what I was going to find at that time, even though I knew that it wasn't good, but I didn't really understand that first day. So it's been 12 unbelievable days. And Rabbi Yael's email came to me just like at this very particular time, like come and share a little bit about what's going on. And I had just given a Devar Torah to the students about Zohar Ta'aseh L'Teva. And I thought, okay, let me see if I can share some of this. But it's all in the context of my chaos. So I want to share a little bit about what's going on, what has been going on for me, and then I'll put it into some Torah context and then talk about how the Torah reflects on that, if that makes sense. The three fronts of my life right now. The first is and first and foremost, really, is Hirsch Goldberg Poland. I'll tell you first how you know him. He is the child of John Poland and Rachel Goldberg. Both of them went to Ida Crown. Dr. Stan Poland, who died in 2017, and his wife Leah, who Rachel's parents, Marcy, is from. I think they're from the city more of Chicago, and his father and her father lives in Florida now. So I assume that there are many.
Also is a member of Skokie Valley.
So that's for me. That's how you know him. He's been. He was at the festival on Shabbat and was I'll share a little more. He was um, he his mother went and I went on Nativ together in 1987, and then we went to Brandeis together, and then we made Aliyah together, and we started this Rosh Chodesh group that we didn't study at Pardes at the same time. We studied at Pardes at slightly different times, but we have both been part of this Rosh Chodesh group, which has been meeting for 30 years. And she had recently started working at Pardes. And when they made Aliyah, when Hirsch was 7, he's 23 now. He and my son Avi went to elementary school together, high school together, and they went actually into the same Army unit. Chativa Sheva, they served in tanks together. So we've been together our whole life. I put in on the 4th page of the source sheet, not to print out, just because it's dear to my heart. It just so happens that Rachel had, I guess Facebook probably reminded her about this picture that we, when they were both, that was taken 14 years ago, last month. So
the source sheet is in the chat.
So on Saturday night, the first thing I did was send a message to my student support team and say, we need to meet tomorrow, right away at 9 o'clock, emergency meeting. And she wrote me back and said, I just got these 2 messages from Hirsch. I love you and I'm sorry. And she said, unless I hear from him now, I won't be I'm not going to come to the meeting. And it was a few long days before, while they have been unbelievable. You might have seen them in the New York Times and Time Magazine and People Magazine and ABC News and CBS News and 60 Minutes. I don't know how they have found the strength to, because it's totally not their style to go out, but they're trying to do everything they can to get their son back. They were able to discover at a certain point, I think around Tuesday, that he and his friend had been in a shelter and had been throwing grenades out of the shelter, and his best friend had died in that battle, I guess, and that he had lost his arm and had been taken captive to Gaza. So they know he's taken captive, and they're just trying to get him back and get information about him. So obviously that is the first and foremost thing on my mind. Heschel says in his essay on prayer, prayer is either exceedingly urgent, exceedingly relevant, or inane and useless. Our first task is to learn to comprehend why prayer is an ontological necessity. God is hiding and man is defying. Every moment God is ensconced is creating and self-concealing. Prayer is disclosed, or at least preventing irreversible, is disclosing, or at least preventing irreversible concealing. God is ensconced in mystery, hidden in the depths. Prayer is pleading with God to come out of the depths.
Mm-hmm.
Out of the depths I have called to thee, O Lord. So all of my prayers have been that. And if you make me if you make me the host, I'll be able to mute people, or you can mute people that when there's background noise. Then he goes on to say, prayer as an episode is a cursory incident, will not establish a home in the land of oblivion. Prayer must pervade as a climate of living, and all of our acts must be carried out as variations on the theme of prayer. A deed of charity, an act of kindness, a ritual moment, each is a prayer in the form of a deed. Such prayer involves a minimum of outwardness and an abundance of inwardness. So everything that I've been doing for the last 13 days has been a prayer in the form of a deed, and all of it is a prayer to bring, including this class with your help, a prayer to bring Hirsch ben Perel Chana, Yonatan Shimshon back to his parents, safe and alive very soon. So that's the first thing that's foremost in my mind. Thank you. Secondly, I have 3 children. My youngest son, whose name is Shalom, is serving in national service right now, and he is he's like every parent who's dying for school to go back. He's working in a on Kibbutz Harduf in the Carmel, trying to provide a home for children. He is in charge of. He's not alone. He is a substitute parent for 12 children from the ages of 7 to 12 who have been removed from their homes. And so we had a break. We didn't have school from Yom Kippur until Sukkot. So like was vacation. And he was very much looking forward to getting kids back into a routine, as anyone who has small children knows what that's like to have long vacations. And instead he's had 13 days of trying to, he said, as he just told me, that the nighttime rituals, these are kids that don't have parents really, and that nighttime they've only had 2, he's in the Carmel, so they've only had 2 sirens, but because of those sirens, the children, nighttime is taking an hour and a half instead of half an hour every night, and that the children are just suffering so much. So he's carrying a very heavy load. My second son, Avi, is 23. As I mentioned, he served with Hirsch in the army, and they got out in August. And Avi went right away to Nepal, and was and had just got back from the Everest base camp and was resting in Kathmandu on Shabbos when the news came in. And he was one of the first phone calls Saturday night that said, "I'm coming home." And he hasn't, because he was just released in August, he wasn't in a Miluim unit yet, but he came straight home, and came home on Monday, and Tuesday morning he was already with his unit again. He's part of that, what they talk about, 110 or 130% of people reporting for Miluim. He's part of that 10 or 30% of people who weren't called, but went back to join their units. He is his partner is an officer in the casualties unit, and so the 2 of them, who were planning to be traveling together at the end of this month, are not planning to travel. Both of them are very strong and resolute and know what they need to be doing and are determined about what they need to be doing, as is my daughter. She is a Ganenet, and her husband is also serving. At the beginning, it didn't seem so intense, but now that it's 13 days in, and she is expecting a baby, her first baby, in less than 2 weeks. And suddenly I've realized, just on Shabbos, first we were on the front of like thinking about, just everyone should be safe and home. And suddenly I'm like, oh my gosh, at any moment I could be the substitute, Lior's life. Please, everything will be fine. And they're expecting Yedid to let Yedid come home to be with Leora for the birth, and who knows what will be afterwards. But it's obviously a very intense time in our home. And of course, they also have known Hirsch their whole lives, but they actually are holding a whole nother set of casualties that are even closer to them than Hirsch, which means that, they are strong and resolute, and they need me to be strong and resolute for them, which I'm trying I think doing with some success, and that's intense. But I have a third front, which is the front of Pardes. As I said, I have 75 immersive students who are here most of them from abroad, as Becca was, as Laura was, as Yael and Will were each in their times, and they're so far from home, and they're under so much. They've never been, when the first siren ran, when the first alarm went off, I just integrated it into my prayers. I mean, of course, I went down to the shelter, but I was calm, and no one's ever tried to kill them before, that they know of in that way, and they're terrified. Um, and they also have so much pressure on their parents, from their parents, and each of them is their own story. And we really believe Kol Hashem B'Koach, Torah was revealed to each God spoke to each person according to their strength, and that everyone has to continue with their learning according to their strength. So we're trying to be there for every student who can. I think that a big part of what's going on is, there's a lot going on. 20 of them have gone to Europe. Only a few have gone to America. Right? Most of the 20 who have left Israel have gone to Europe, and only a few have gone to America. And they've gone to Europe because they're hoping that the situation will stabilize and they'll be able to come back. And in the meantime, they're participating in classes through Zoom. So we're trying to support all of those students who need to leave, and also encourage those. I really believe that, first of all, that as I said, I feel pretty confident myself about Yerushalayim. We're in a good place. We have shelters. It's scary to go to a bomb shelter when there's alarm. It is scary to go to a bomb shelter when there's alarm. It's scary to hear the explosions when you're in the shelter, but we have shelters, and we're in a unique. There's a lot of gratitude for the ability to be protected, and so those students who are able to stay, it is, I think, very, very meaningful for Am Yisrael and for them as individuals to be here. We've been going to Shiva homes and to funerals. The funerals you're not supposed to gather in major groups outside, but we've been going. So what they've been doing is meeting people on the street. So we went on the street with flags to see the families off as they are going to the funerals. And the students we've been running a packaging center, both for soldiers and for families who've been displaced, Bedouin families and Jewish families who've been displaced from the South. We've been sending them supplies and things that they need. Today, students painted a school shelter in bright colors, so it feels great. Yesterday, they went and cleaned a different group of students went and cleaned the shelters of elderly people who can't do it themselves. So people they're doing all sorts of meaningful volunteering, and just learning and being here and standing strong with Israel is, I think, of tremendous significance and will be so meaningful for them. But it's scary. I'm part of what's scary about this war is every little sound. You're always wondering, wait, is that a siren? Is that a siren? Is that a siren? And I'm reminded of the verse, of the curses in the Tochacha, in the end of Leviticus, which says, for those who survive, I'm going to cast a faintness into their hearts in the land of their enemies. The sound of a driven leaf will pursue them to flight. Fleeing as though the sword, they shall fall, though no one pursues. With no one pursuing, they shall stumble over one another as before the sword. And it does feel like that curse is something that is coming true for us, as we're constantly afraid, all the time afraid, like a driven leaf, that things are, that something bad is happening, that we need to run. Do we need to run? we have a minute and a half to get to the safe room. So you have to go fast when the siren rains, when it happens. It so happens part of what we were looking forward to. It was supposed to be my husband just before COVID quit his job in high tech to become a poet, and he published his first book of poetry this year. It's called The Book of Noah. And of course, he was going to have a book launch, which got canceled. So in lieu of that, I'd like to read a few of the poems that I feel are relevant. It's a beautiful book. It's a lot, it's echo poetry, and it's touching on COVID. It's not about war. And yet he calls this one is called Waiting for Rain. This time, Noah dreamed the flood came too soon. He was hunched over a quartered tree, adze in hand, chipping away another beam when the first drops sizzled down, and he knew it would never stop. A goat wandered by wearing the head of a bear and cackled like his neighbors. He heard the rasp of his grandson as the waters thickened, leaving no place of purchase. He wanted the dream to end the way he wanted all waiting to end. Arid sky in the back of his throat, deepening doubt of a lifetime, the planks of his body sealed with dust. So this poem touches on this piece of being a driven leaf, the fear of not being prepared at any moment. And it also touches on what I think has been the hardest time for me every day, is waking up with just the dread of, how am I going to face this day again? Get me back to my old life. So that is part of what's those are the things that I'm coming at, those three fronts, each of which demand totally different things from me. A sense of, I think that for my children, it's actually super important that I be strong, that I be chazak ve'amatz, that I'm calm and I'm in control, and for my students that I'm confident, but a different kind of emotion is appropriate in that space, especially as they are, my children don't have time to mourn. They have to say, B'yachad ninatzeach, Am Yisrael Chai. And that's their mode. And the students need to pray for peace in a different kind of way. They mean something different because they're not the soldiers on the front, even though they are actually serving on the front in a different way. And so for me, that chaos of trying to be present for my own feelings with Rachel and Hirsch, with my children and with my students, and I should have said this also about Pardes, is that I'm not unique. There's 30, the entire staff. There's probably about 30. There's somewhere around 30 people, next of kin, our children and family members of our faculty and staff who are serving on the front line. It's quite a long list of people for whom to pray. We are all in that situation, and we also want to support our students who feel guilty because they're thinking about their own safety, and because they are, how dare they be scared when my child is risking their life, and how do I try to be there for everyone, because all of that's true. So those are the things that I'm coming at Parshat Noach. And it's a kind of a funny thing that we said there's a pasuk, and now thank you for dropping that source sheet again. That was a very long introduction, but a little bit about, I think, why you brought me here is to share a little bit about what's going on for me. And that's, I cited this verse at the top of the source sheet, Sohar ta'aseh l'teva. Sohar is it's a hapax gamlaron. It only appears once in the Torah. So you could translate it. Well, you see in Rashi that there's two possibilities. And this is source. I didn't renumber the sources. You've got source 8 and source 9. Source 9, Rashi says, some say it's a window, and others say it's a precious stone that would give them light. And this Rashi just makes me laugh. I don't think so hard because Rashi's not sure. It seemed like he says there's two possibilities of what the pshat is. Either it's a window, or maybe it's a magic stone that like shined light from within the ark. And I'm not sure which one is likely to be the simple reading of the text. Really, to me, it's obvious that it's about a window, and I think part of what I hope we'll get to now in the Torah is to like think about why does what is he holding on to when he holds on to that precious stone as a possible reading? Why might that be? Why might that make sense? So I think in order to understand that, it's important to just think about what are windows? What's the point of windows? And I think of course, we need to focus on Noah, but it helps to focus on Noah by thinking of another place where there's windows that are related to in a very funny way, which is the windows of the temple. And now I'm going to source number 1, which is on page 2 of your source sheet. We'll talk about the windows of the. We'll go back to page 1, but to talk a little bit about the temple windows. You see in the Book of Kings, in Shlomo's temple, the first thing that God decide that is mentioned in the building of Solomon's temple is right that you've got the size of the building, and before we talk about any decorations, before we talk about the walls or the doors, they talk about the windows. The windows are shkufim atumim. And again, there is another place. The word shakuf and atum appear in the Tanakh and other places, but JPS has to say meaning of Hebrew uncertain. Because it's so confusing. What the heck are these words? Because the word shakuf means see-through, and the word atum means closed. So it's an oxymoron, right? The idea of shakuf atum doesn't make any sense at all. And all of the commentaries are trying to figure out what the heck, why this focus on the windows is so central to the temple, and why call them something that is so confusing. So I put here a few commentaries on, and we're not going to get bogged down in the pshat, actually. Alan said the pshat is probably some combination of windows that are either maybe it's glass, which is shakuf, but atum, right? You can see through it, but it's closed. Or maybe it's lattice, which is closed off in some way, but you can also see out. But I think it's very interesting to look at the midrashic understanding, which helps us get at what is the point of the windows in the temple. I'll just jump to source number 4. The Gemara in Menachot says that Sava B'nai Israel, the Koy Lech Hashem and Zaitzah. Well, we don't really need so much. The tell them to have get ready to make a menorah. Why do they need to make the menorah for the temple? Kila oro. Velo li lola oro ani tzarich. I don't need a lamp in my if this is a house for God doesn't need light. There's a shulchan, there's a table with the showbreads, but God doesn't need to eat. What's the point of those things? And then it says, and what about the windows? The windows are usually we think that windows are for light. And he says, for the house he's made windows broad and narrow, broad without and narrow within, for I am not in need of the light. V'yas l'bayit chalonei shkufim atumim. שקופים ועצומים, שקופים מבפנים ועצומים מבחוץ, לא לאורה אני צריך. That God doesn't need the windows are shakuf the way they understand it from the inside and closed towards the outside, by which they mean, it's very confusing, but then the Psik Rabati says it now, that they're narrow, that they, if you're in a fortress, if you've ever been to Migdal David or any of these other Crusader castles kind of thing, they put the windows have a slat and then they're triangular open towards you. So you can fit your whole body and just stick your arrow out the window. And the ones in the Beit HaMikdash actually went the opposite, so that they would be just a slat at the inside, and then as they opened wider as you would get outside. And what the Midrash is saying here is actually, that's because the reason why the Crusader castles are built that way is to protect you from the outside. Not too much can get in, except for the light. And as the light comes in through the window, you open up and let it spread in all different directions. That's the idea of that they're suggesting here, is actually the light is going out. And so here we have multiple, what we're understanding is the regular function of windows, which you probably had thought about this before. Why do you have windows in your house? For light. You need to have light. And I know at this time of year, until this time of year, I've been davening outside every single day, and I can still daven outside now, because when the light comes down on my back in the morning, I say, Ki bior panecha natata lanu, Torah chayim v'yavat. I feel or panei Hashem. I know it's meant to be a metaphor, but I actually experience that metaphor in profound ways. Or chadash al Tzion ta'ir. The light feels like God's presence, and I feel the windows are designed to bring light into the house, and the temple doesn't need light. The temple has its own light. It shines light from within, and it's actually bringing the light out. As you see in source number 7, right, which is basically talking about or legoyim. Profound. It's a poignant verse to read now, because it's talking about, of course, a future world, a world where lo yisagoy el goy charev v'lo yimodu od milchama, v'shafat bein goyim v'ochiach la'amin that they'll melcheh b'orchotecha ki mitzion tetzei Torah udvar Adonai miYerushalayim, that the Jews are going to be a light unto the nations, right? Where God's light is we're all going to walk to God's light, and that light will bring that light is the Torah, and that's what's going out, shining forth from Zion, and will bring this new world order. So the idea of light, windows in a function, when they function in your house, the idea of light is the idea of a window in your house is to have light. But in the temple, wait a minute, we really want that in the temple, the windows are designed to send light outwards. The light starts in the temple and emanates outwards into the sunshine in the most ironic way, right? The point of the light is to go into the sunshine. And I love this idea that the windows of the temple are designed to Kimitzion Tetzei Torah, that the light will go out from the temple out to everybody else. But I thought, at first I thought, this is so beautiful and so right, and it's exactly the way I experience light, and I want God's light to shine forwards. And then I started to think, okay, so then why do we have walls? What's like, if our goal is to share the light outwards, so then why do it let's just send out light without walls. Um, and what caused me to think about this differently was the Kodesh HaKodeshim, because in the Kodesh HaKodeshim there actually are no windows, and there too there was no windows at all. And in source number 6 it says, before the ark was taken, the high priest would enter and exit by the light of the ark, right? It was similar to there was as if the ark, right? Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, the light was shining forth from the Aron Kodesh through those kufim atumim windows, and there was so much light, it was going out into the world. And once the Aron was taken, then it was just dark. But it was total darkness in the Kodesh HaKodeshim. So I guess I found myself thinking like, well, okay, I understand why we think of light as God's presence. And so then why do you want the Kodesh HaKodeshim to be dark? And I'd like, of course, I don't want to put people on the spot, because if anyone can pipe in if you have a thought about it, but your cameras aren't on, so it's not nice to call in people, to ask real questions when cameras are off. But what I would think is because it's a place of intimacy. They say that when Bnei Yisrael was in a good place with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, that the Kruvim were wrapped up one in another in as if they were symbolic. It was symbolic that Bnei Yisrael and a Kadosh Baruch Hu were caught in lovemaking embrace. And that's something that you don't do in the light. That's something that you do where you don't want windows for that kind of thing. There's an intimacy that comes from an unwindowed place. And so I found myself thinking about the temple in two ways, right? The windows in the temple in two ways. On the one hand, the windows are designed, we think of windows as a way to bring light in. But the temple windows were a way to bring light out, to show a connection between God's presence and the world out there. On the one hand, and on the other hand, there was a desire for walls, as there was a desire for the Kodesh HaKodeshim to have intimacy, to have a private relationship, something that was very, a very powerful and intimate relationship, which requires privacy and protection and security. And so it's with those ideas about windows, the idea of windows as a way of looking out to the world, as well as getting light inside, and also the need for intimacy and privacy that I turned to Parshat Noach. And when I turn to Parshat Noach with those thoughts, then I can think again about that Rashi. So let's go back to that Rashi now, at the beginning of the source sheet.
Meesh, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
What do you think about it being a windowless room as being like a place to recharge, like where no one can see you? Like I'm thinking about the Gemara about Hashem expressing Hashem's own feelings only in privacy. So less to do about us or relationally, but more about one's internal self-work.
Nice. So you need that. So let's add another meaning then to the dark. One possibility is that you've got privacy and intimacy and it's relational. And the other is that it's just a place where you're safe to be alone and by yourself and to recharge. In that context, thinking about going back to that Rashi. Some say it's a window, and others say it's a precious stone that would give them light. The others say that it's a precious stone that would give them light is a citation from the Gemara in Sanhedrin, which is source 10 right below. Sohar ta'aseh l'teva, amar Rabbi Yochanan, amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'Noach, kava ba avanim tovot u'margaliot, kedei shiyu me'irot lechem ketzaharayim. You see how they got it from Tzohar? That you should fix precious stones and pearls that will in the inside of the ark, so that it will be so that they'll light up for you like the afternoon. Sohar is from the language of afternoon. It's not from the language of. It's not about a window, an opening. Rather, it's about something that has its own internal light, very similar to what we saw in the temple, where the ark emanated light, and the light was just for the people in the ark. So, or the people or for God in the Kodesh Kodeshim, the light, and the high priests in the Kodesh Kodeshim. There was light, just as there was light in the Kodesh Kodeshim, which emanated from something sacred and holy. So too in the ark, according to Rabbi Yochanan, there was some sort of magic stone which protected and created that kind of total intimacy that nobody could come into, that was total recharging. And here, as Rabbi Yael saying, it like really makes sense. You'd have total recharging and complete safety inside. And thinking about it now in the context of this war, you can understand, right, the protection that comes from being of total insulation in our windows, that would just like, by not having a window, we're so much more protected. We have so much more intimacy. We're closed into ourselves and we're protected. And then to think about that window, Sohar ta'aseh l'teva, if it's an internal light, we don't need Noah's Ark didn't need light in order to help them breathe. God could create magic light for them in the same way God created a magic ark, which managed somehow to fit all of those animals and keep going for a whole year, right? God didn't need the light, and that's the idea of Rabbi Yochanan. And it makes sense that they didn't want that light, because they wanted to be protected and they wanted to be insulated from a really brutal world that's out there. And according to the first interpretation, and this is how I used it on Rosh Chodesh morning, Sohar ta'aseh l'teva, we need to have a window. We need to, people, so that we can get light in, but so that we can be aware, we can be connected to what's happening outside. How could it possibly be that Noah would be so wrapped up in an intimate world that he wouldn't know what's going on outside? And that manifests itself in another famous, it's in the pshat of the text, really, and Rashi points it out, when they get onto the ark, according gender separated, right? The men get on the ark together, and the women get on the ark together. And when they're told to get off, zugot, to get out, go out, male, female, male, female, male, female. And that, and Rashi understands that to mean, how could they possibly be having marital relations while the world was falling apart? Because it's essential they have this window to the world, that they're connected to the world, that they are aware of what's going on outside them, that this destruction is something that, even though they are protected from the destruction at some level, they're also aware and part of and participating in some way. So when I said it to my students, it was because we had a window, and this week we've taken in 5 new students, which sounds absolutely ridiculous. But these are people that wanted to stay in Israel, and their program closed for whatever reason. And we have hashtag uninterrupted Torah. We're making sure, we're keeping going with our Torah no matter what. And so some of the people came from other programs that closed, and some of the people were just people that were work remotely and are in their homes too much, and in these circumstances they needed to have community, and they wanted to come and join the Pardes community at this time for further support, to just be together. And so Tzohar Ta'aseh L'Teva, making a window, is about how can we, on the one hand, be sheltering, taking care of ourselves and protecting ourselves, and also have a window enough open that we're reacting and involved in what's happening around us, and that we can help the people around us. So I'm thinking about Rabbi Yochanan, and I'm thinking about the idea of windows, and trying to sort of figure out, it depends on where you are. There is no question that we're very influenced. Windows have a two-way. According to Rabbi Yochanan, I assume what Rabbi Yochanan was thinking was that the world was so brutal out there that you need to completely and totally isolate yourself from that world. And you need to be hermetically sealed from everything that's going on around out there. And Rashi is and the idea of windows is no, you have to always be connected. And I've been thinking about that over the course of this week, really, of where are we and which front are we on? I think about it, my children who are fighting on the front line need to be more attuned. They need to be stronger and less connected with they can't afford to see the suffering of what's happening. Even like I asked, are they getting social workers to help those people? People saw some really, really brutal stuff this week. What kind of help are they getting? And what I heard is like, no, we're not even talking about it. It's like we have closed ourselves off from those things, and we're fully focused on our mission, which is survival at this moment, and we're fighting, and all of our light is coming from inside. And the students need something different. They need a different kind of they need a different kind of window, and they need to figure out also how much window can they handle. How many times should they speak to their mother this week? Is it okay to talk to my mother every single day? And every day she says to me, come home. Maybe you should, for some people, they should come home. It depends on the mother. It depends on but I'm feeling this, who can open up, and how much can we open up, and how big can we make our windows at this time. And that's what I'm thinking about this week, as I'm thinking about Parshat Noach, and it helps me to think about the temple windows as I think about the ark windows. It's not a coincidence. Yes, of course. It's not a coincidence that that we call the temple a sanctuary, right? And that it functions as a safe place. And we hold on to Karnot Mizbeach, to the corners of the altar, as a refuge. So we're trying to figure out how to, on the one hand, have that refuge, that safety, that place where you can retreat to, and at the same time, to be turned forwards. And I think you guys have a whole different thing. We're all sort of emanating fronts, and thinking about how can you, on the one hand, be connected to what's happening with Am Yisrael, and on the other hand, trying to help Am Yisrael defend Am Yisrael from wow, it's pretty brutal for us to read the things that are being said about Israel and the kind of, I mean, some of our students are getting tons of hate mail, and it's very painful. And we're counting on you guys to support us through all of that, as we're just trying to do what we need to do in order to survive. I'd like to, I'm happy to take comments and questions, but I want to make sure to end, yes, as we all stand together, to end with prayers. Everything we do is prayer indeed through all of these days, but I want to, I shared this one more poem from my husband, which is there on your source sheet. Evening prayer. This is how it feels to be a forest. Each tree alone within reach of another, each tree bent from holding up the sky. Sometimes a great wind blows and all the trees sway. Sometimes there is a hush, and only one seems to move from an unseen breath. I know that's a COVID poem, but it's about, each of us in our different, we're in one big arc, all of us, and each of us experiencing our own arcs in different ways and bending with the wind in different ways, and together, all coming together. I'm going to share now a prayer from that was written originally by Rav Shlomo Goren and adopted by his son Rami, and has been adopted a little bit. And I'll read it in Hebrew and English. מי שברך אבותינו אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, משה, אהרון, דוד ושלמה. אברהם הוא יברך וישמור ויציל את בנינו היקרים, חיילי צבא ההגנה לישראל, ושאר הלוחמים, למען ביטחון העם בארץ, ואזרחים זקנים וצעירים, נשים, גברים וטף, הנמצאים בצרה ובמצוקה, בינונים, למשיסיה ולסכנה בשבי. May God, who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, David, Shlomo, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, also bless and protect and save our precious children, the soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces. May God also bless everyone fighting for the security of our people and our country. May God bless the citizens, old and young, women, men, and children who are in trouble and in distress and subject to danger and devastation while in captivity. Kadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Rachamim Aleihem, L'kayman U'Lachzikam, L'achyotam, L'achayot Rucham V'tikvatam, L'asir Mimiskar Nafsham, L'otzi Mitzaram L'irvacha, U'Mishiabud B'Gula. May God have full mercy on them, keep them alive and strengthen them and revive their spirit and their hope, to rescue them from bondage, to move them from distress to relief and from captivity to redemption. ופצועים שבהם ישלח השם רפואה שלמה מן השמיים, רפואת הנפש ורפואת הגוף, יזכו כולם לשוב במהרה לביתם ולארצם בריאים ושלמים, לחיים ולשלום, ויקוים בהם דברי הכתוב, לחבוש לנשברי לב ולקרוא לשבויים דרור. For those who are wounded, may God send complete healing from the heaven, healing of the soul and of the body. May they be able to return quickly to their home and to their country, healthy and whole. May the words of the scripture be fulfilled to them, to heal the brokenhearted, to call the captives liberated. Amen. Tefillah l'shalom. יהי רצון מלפניך אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו שתבטל מלחמות ושפיכות דמים מן העולם, ותמשיך שלום גדול ונפלא בעולם, ולא יישא גוי על גוי חרב, ולא ילמדו עוד מלחמה, רק יכירו וידעו כל יושבי תבל האמת לאמיתה, אשר לא באנו לזה העולם בשביל שביב ומחלוקת חס ושלום, ולא בשביל שנאה, וקנאה, וקנטור ושפיכות דמים, חס ושלום. רק באנו לעולם כדי להכיר ולדעת אותך תברך לנצח, ויקוים מקרא שכתוב. ונתתי שלום בארץ ושכבתם ואין מאחרית, והשפעתי חיי הרע מן הארץ, וחרב לא תעבור בארצכם, ונאמר. God, may it be your will, God, God of our fathers, that war and blood spilling should be eliminated from the world, that a great peace should be in the world, and that nation should not lift up sword against nation, nor should they learn war. We should just know, all of us, everyone who lives in this world, the truth about that we have not come to this world in order to argue, God forbid, nor to hate or to be jealous or to start fights or to spill blood, God forbid. We've only come to know you, God, for all eternity, and to fulfill the verse that all of us, that we should have peace in the land and we should go to sleep without fear. Let a sword not pass through our land, and so may it be. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Meesh, so much for opening the window into your experience and all of the suffering in Israel right now. I know it is not simple or easy to do that, and we appreciate all the emotional energy that you're able to give us today to let us see inside all of your fronts. Thank you. I will, if you have time, I'm happy to open the floor for questions. I just want to say quickly that I hope you'll join us next week. Rabbi Zachary Trubath will come and teach about the Eish Kodesh, the rabbi of the Warsaw Ghetto, looking at one of his drashot, and the title will be "The Jews Are a Stiff-Necked People." So Rabbi Trubath will share as Meesh did, and also share Torah. So thank you again. And if you would like to ask a question, feel free to unmute yourself and jump in.
So I would just like to say, by coincidence, Pardes from Jerusalem, the podcast this week, has Mish's husband, Yoni Hammer-Kossoy. He's speaking with Nechama Goldman-Barish with Tzvi Hirschfeld on the podcast. It's a great podcast, Pardes from Jerusalem, and Yoni is reading from his poetry on Noah. So that would be great for everybody to log on to that and become a subscriber, Pardes from Jerusalem. Thank you, Meesh. I look forward to seeing you again at Yedidia when times are better.
Amen, amen. Thank you so much for that plug.
Thank you. You've given us so much to think about. I know that we'll chew on your Torah throughout Shabbat and think of you often in our tefillot, as well as Hirsch and your children and all of your many extended children of Pardes as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.